Fatemeh, thank you for coming in today. You have such a tremendous background. You're a key leader within the Avanade Corporation, which is one of the world's largest IT services companies. And you're an expert at software engineering and machine learning and artificial intelligence and data science, and just a real change maker. And in fact, I really enjoyed you moderating the fireside I did with Avanade. It was a lot of fun. It was an Ask Me Anything, by the way, to the audience, where we just put questions in and we played with those questions and answered them and so on. So Fatemeh, again, I really appreciate you sharing your insights with our audience.
Sure. Hey, Stephen, I'm delighted to be here. I also enjoyed a lot to be moderator in the fireside chat in our Avanade speaking. So I'm super happy to start our chat about whatever it is.
So, Fatemeh, you've got such a great background and you continue to have great impact. What were the inflection points in your career? Maybe it was something when you were really young, or could have been when you're in your early grades, could be somewhere in your family, and it could be some of the things that you did in your career as well. So maybe 2 or 3 major inflection points.
Sure. Well, I think I'm not an exception. Everyone's parent, I think it's the most important key in the success in any way. And it was the same for me. My mom was super careful about our education, even in very early stages. We were super supervised in details of how we are doing. But I can name some of them, some of the turning point that transformed my direction a little bit. One was whenever I was in grade 5th, super young, there was I was living in a small town south of Iran, and I had a teacher, and there was a kind of a school for talented student at that time. They had some kind of exam to enter the school. You couldn't start your elementary school over there directly. And for preparing the exam, my 5th grade teacher helped me a lot. And she was you know what, sometimes you feel like you are a teacher in a small part of the world, maybe not that much impact can be done, but I believe deeply that no matter where you are doing, where you are, what you are doing, it's gonna have impact. And she really was the catalyst for my dreams, because I could enter the school for talented student, and from there I could have lots of confidence in myself, that I can do things. And the other thing was in my grade 7, 8, I figured out I'm a super math girl, and since then I think nothing except math. So whenever I wanted to enter a school, my first and only choice was pure math. But another turning point for me was that my uncle was a professor at the university at that time in statistics. And he was math is not something that you want to do for your entire career, the pure math. So he guided me for software engineering, and he said you will be able to apply your background and your interest in the math for a better cause. So that was another, and I'm super happy I listened to him. So I entered the school. I could enter the school in one of top 3 schools in the Iran, and the reason was I can say it was one of the most important reason was my grade 5th teacher. After that, I would say maybe the last but not the least was whenever I decided to come to Canada for continuing my education in my PhD studies. That was also something really changing for me, because of my background. Even my beliefs and everything was changing whenever I came here. It's not only about the career or education world. My personality also changed because I could see the world differently.
That's really fascinating. So you had a teacher, almost like a mentor in your early grades, and that gave you a lot of confidence. And then you had this affinity for mathematics. You're gifted in mathematics, and yet you had a family member say, you know what, who was a professor of mathematics, to
Yeah,
maybe consider something that really practical, right? So software
exactly.
engineering is very practical. And so
Yeah,
you get your undergrad in software engineering, but math will help you in any kind of field of study, and especially in software engineering. And then you come to Canada and you're saying Canada was really transformational for you because it opened your eyes to many other possibilities. And
exactly.
you got your master's in artificial intelligence at the University of Calgary, right?
I did my master in Iran as well. After my master, I came here for my PhD studies.
Ah, I see. So your
Yeah,
PhD then at the University of Calgary.
exactly. Yeah, I did my PhD in software engineering at University of Calgary, but my focus was on applied machine learning.
Ah, okay. So that's why you're the data scientist,
Yeah,
machine learning expert at Avanade. Now,
yeah,
I know your research focuses on things like what, leveraging feature exploitation to automate practical machine learning with text, image, and tabular data. It sounds like it's a good fit for foundation models.
it is, and the reason is that like whenever you come to the world of AI, ML, the key is data, right? And so if you can get a little bit of each part of the data, no matter if it is text, image, like big tabular data, video, audio, whatever it is, if you can like get the skills to work with those data, you are one step ahead. And that's why like this field was interesting for me, and could catch my eye, as I could like be a little bit expert in some of these areas.
Now, I know in our sort of preliminary to prepare for this sort of fireside chat I did, you mentioned that you were going to do an internal workshop on foundation
Yeah,
models and how to use it and what they are,
exactly.
things like that. So maybe to the audience, because not everybody knows what it is. Like they hear ChatGPT, they may have
Yeah,
played with it, they may have played with GPT-4, which is now part of ChatGPT,
yeah,
and they may have attended this Google conference last week on
yeah,
Idaho where they mentioned Palm 2, and then next week is of course Microsoft Build,
yeah.
and these conferences are really focused on foundation models. So can you describe what are foundation models, where they fit into the hierarchy of AI?
Sure. So AI, we have a traditional AI. In the traditional AI, we usually have some of like the tag data and the models learn the data. But in the recent generative AI model that like ChatGPT and other text-based model fall into that category, they are, as it's being said, it's generative AI. It is not the same as traditional AI, but they deeply being found on deep learning. And deep learning is a deep neural network. It's like a neural network with many layers, and each layer has different capabilities. I won't go to the details, I promise. But the thing is that based on that deep learning models, that like if like a few years back, if you asked me what is like the best model now, probably I would say deep learning without any pause. But now I feel like, okay, my understanding of deep learning at that time couldn't be like wasn't comprehensive enough of like the capabilities. But after we saw the ChatGPT and the models in the like NLP world, how they are close to our like human mind, which is both good and which is both scary. I'm like, okay, that is super good, but we need to be careful. So regarding your question, it falls into the modern models in generative AI. They do have autoencoders like decoding, encoding part. Again, I won't say details, but it's kind of different than the traditional models, and it's able to learn from huge amount of the data. As you know, these models were learned from whatever was on the internet, including many book corpora and the other things, until I guess the last one was 2021, but they are getting updated. So whatever was there, the model is able to somehow grasp the knowledge from there and reproduce the knowledge for us, which is some part that we see it's super helpful in both. Whenever I'm doing the coding, I get help a lot over there. Or I know even like kids in school now are using that for even writing essays or something for them. So it's changing the world, but we need to be a little bit um warned about it and think about it as well at the same time.
So if I'm a business person and I have a company and I'm thinking, you know what, I hear about this chat GPT, I may have played with it. How can I use it in my business? I mean, how do you move from this thing that's available in Bing AI, right? Where people can play with Bing and it has this AI bit in it so they can ask it in a conversational way questions, and it gives these different kinds of responses, very narrative-like. How do you move that kind of capability that everybody's familiar with into, okay, now I want to optimize my supply chain, or I want to optimize my employee interaction, or some of the things that are not just pure text-based or chat-based, I should say.
Yeah, that's true. Like the thing is that you can imagine it as I'm saying human, but I meant like just the textual part of human brain, that it can understand like your data deeply and can give you evaluation. Just as like a simple example is that you may have an organization that they do have lots of reports, lots of feedback, and like you give them money and you want to see how they are doing, and they give you some kind of reports and like feedbacks and everything. It can be either in a Excel sheet or huge Azure-based database, whatever it is. The thing is that OpenAI can get into that and can, like, let's say, provide you with the key factors in each report or in each category, or it can put them in the categories like, okay, this category is focusing on the sale, but they are using this language and they are not successful. This category is focusing on ad, and they are successful, and these are the key reasons. I mean, the kind of insights that you can get out of the models it doesn't have any ending. So again, it really depends on how you formulate and articulate your problem. It's gonna affect what you get from the model, but it always gonna be lots of things over there that the model can help you with. It doesn't matter which business are you in, really. It does not.
That's really fascinating. And I guess what it does is it can give you insights into things that are happening in your business or in your life or in education. And it seems like it doesn't matter what it is. It'll give you insights or patterns or associations that you may not have thought of before, and then express it in a way that you can understand, right? So it'll analyze this, and then they'll say, these are the things you need to pay attention to, or it'll analyze different pieces of data and then into a spreadsheet say, this is what the graph of it can look like, or these are the important factors, or these are the dependencies.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, because it understands like human language, it can help a lot, and it has the like computational availability and capability to use like all of the human languages at once and give us a bigger picture that maybe some individual human being can grasp. So that's something that can be leveraged to get the business to the next step.
You may have seen Jeff Hinton, about a week and a half ago. He left Google, and then he sort of been on the road talking about about this, and some really intriguing ideas in there. Not everybody agrees, right? Some people agree and some people don't. So in other words, some people think that this is something that needs to be paid attention to, and I would recommend the audience go directly to hear what he's talking about. But my interpretation of what he's saying is that last year he thought humans were better, and now he's saying that maybe this system is actually more efficient at learning or doing things than humans, and that's sort of like a recent change of thinking of his. And so that now creates for him a challenge, a tension, I guess, that, you know, we have to pay attention that maybe it's actually better at doing things. And then if you were to extrapolate on that, that could have consequences, good consequences, and maybe some challenging consequences. And he talks about how, you know, a particular set of this model, this kind of ChatGPT instance or GPT-4 instance or something similar, could learn something, and then it could share this with 1,000 other instances.
Yeah. Yeah.
And each one of these instances could be learning something else, and they can instantly share with each other. So that's a kind of an acceleration of learning. Yeah. And the fact that he talks about 100 trillion sort of capabilities or sort of the equivalent of parameters in the human brain, and this thing's doing it with about a trillion, and he's saying it can do things we can't do. So that's where he's thinking it's more efficient in some ways. Did I get that wrong? Or, but again, I recommend the audience go directly and get their own interpretation. That's the way I thought he was saying, right? So
yeah, that's you said, like, what you said is totally correct. The thing is that what is becoming a little bit concerning is that so far in the human history, like 4 billion years, whatever it is, we always, like, we didn't need to be worried about some alien that might know better than us. I know, like, these AI models that we are referring to, we built them. But exactly as you said, they can learn from each other. I mean, they can improve themselves, and they can, at some point, maybe in some parts, I wouldn't say like in biological, I wouldn't say in like robotic part, they won't be like better than human, but they don't need that. I mean, but even in the human language part, they are getting better because of like all the parameters that you mentioned. And at the same time, it's super useful and everybody is talking about it, but we should be concerned because we saw, like, okay, companies develop ChatGPT or, like, I don't know, Lambda or other models, and they are putting it in the public view, right? But it won't happen if a company is a biological company and they have like a good virus that can empower people. They won't do that. They don't have like the regulation to do that. So it should be something around this area, because it's getting to the point that it can be used with some bad actors, and it is, I know it is common for everything. But just imagine whatever Jeff Hinton said. Just imagine, it wasn't actually Jeff Hinton, it was like AI-based model generated those speeches. And just imagine how much impact it can have on the societies. I mean, it's just a sample. A sample of, because it's able to generate content, super intelligent content. We should be aware of like those parts as well. I used to be not to be worried about AI at all, but now I'm thinking about, okay, we are human, so we could develop car industry, we could develop drug industry, we could put regulation around it, so no drug can be used, and nothing is more like more powerful to infect in our bodies than drugs, right? But now we could manage it. I'm hopeful we can manage AI as well, but I'm totally with Jeff Hinton in the concerning part as well, because again, just as a sample, like US is the most powerful country in terms of information system and how the freedom of the speech is over there. But just can we imagine that many of the people over there do not have the belief that vaccines can work? I mean, it's just the ability of the AI and the information that you give the people to change the direction that the people are thinking about. So it's just something that we need to think about. And as human society, I'm pretty sure we can get to the point that we are confident and safe whenever we are using AI. So yeah, I totally understand what he is saying, both on the good side and concerning side.
You know, it's really interesting, and that's why I'm really looking forward to some of these conferences. You know, like I
Yeah,
catch the NVIDIA ones, and then I caught Google I/O last week, and then I'm going to catch Microsoft Build next week, because you can see
exactly.
just this rapid evolution that's occurring in all of this. But there's so many practical uses too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you can even use it in sort of drug discovery. You could use it
exactly. Yeah.
in
The
ID.
positive side is like is unbelievably big. So I'm saying like it's super good, but again, because of like the regulation and that the accessibility that everyone has, you should just be aware of like the potential over there, that someone is getting a little bit more intelligent than us in the language part, and the language is everything that we use to communicate and to convince people and to build our society. So just we need that regulation, I guess, as Jeff Hinton is saying and others are saying, like Elon Musk and like Bill Gates, others that like signed that a letter as well. I mean, they're just saying, okay, let's pause and decide. I wouldn't say how. We don't know yet, but we need to think about it.
And then how do you prepare engineers? So a lot of my audience are software engineers, and they're interested in this, and maybe they're not active in it, and yet now they're going to have to start ingesting this into their businesses and companies, maybe government agencies, wherever they work. Do you have any sort of recommendations how software engineers can get involved in learning about this and then actually applying it in a safe way? And then you know, what are sort of the steps to do that?
Sure. So the first step, if I want to like if I want to put some direction for someone new to get to this world, gonna be okay. You need to be familiar with ML models, like mathematic, how they work, and then with the deep learning, generative AI, and then get to the point that you make yourself comfortable with the UI. It can be in Azure, OpenAI, or other Google-based models, or Databricks model, or Facebook models. They are all giving out great models. So those are the steps to be the place that you can actually use the tool and make something useful for your business or the company that you are working for. But for being responsible, everyone is responsible, but I wouldn't say like the lay audience gonna be those that have the power to make those regulation. We need to like use it responsibly, as like we do have tools in responsible AI in Azure, in Microsoft, and other companies as well. So we can use those tools for sure, but still maybe it's not like it's everyone's responsibility to be at that point, but it's not what Jeff Hinton is talking about or others are talking about. Maybe it's in much more higher level, about like being concerned than individual level, which individually we can handle it, I guess, well, and because the tools are kind of handful for now.
You know, what do you think about it in used in code generation and being this sort of assistant, or, you know, different people call it different things, like a co-pilot to help in writing code? You know, what are your opinions on that, and where do you think that's going to evolve? And in fact, I participated, in other words, I was in the audience of a big talk last week, and there was the CEO of a software development company, and he was saying something like it's a really effective tool, and even the cost is so low. And there's numbers like if you're in Silicon Valley and you had a high-end software engineer with benefits, probably like $1,200 a day. That's how much that software engineer is going to cost. And he estimates that using one of these or not auto, but using generative AI to help you write code, he's thinking it's down to like 12 cents a day. You know,
I do
so
agree. Yeah, I do agree. And it I'm in the software engineering industry and data scientist industry. I know it might be okay, scary in terms of many might lose the job, but just I think about it as like a traditional format of like, I don't know, building the car or building like the things that we didn't have the firm to automate everything. So we lost many of the workforce whenever we could automate everything. It's the same here. I know like many might be scared, okay, if it is that case, so I might be in the position that I might lose my job. But the thing is that, yeah, it's gonna be less on the coding itself, pure coding, but still there are lots of new skills to be learned whenever we approach this generation and this like this phase of the AI. So I won't be worried about like, again, yeah, the pure coding, the basic coding that it's been used everywhere. So you like, we don't need software engineering anymore to like write everything from scratch. We can use Gen AI and in much less like, but we do need always a person to monitor what Gen AI is producing, but it's gonna take much less time. So I'm not sure about the like amount of the like money that you said, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna save a lot for the businesses. But at the same time, there is a double-edged sword. So at the same time, those people like me that are in this industry, we need to be prepared to empower ourselves as the technology is going on. We can get ourselves like capable with the new technologies which is emerging and make ourselves updated all the time. It's going to help us a lot.
Are you spending quite a bit of time then sort of sandboxing some of this, playing with it? Because you know you're the lead in data science and machine learning for a big company, so, and you've got a lot of engineers.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, I did. I really did. And for me, I started sandboxing and recently, because I was aware of the math behind it, but I recently was like, okay, maybe I need to know math in this specific aspect of the model. So even like jumping into the details background is still something that never ends. Again, like, because I have PhD, maybe like many things, PhD is something that you know a lot, but really it's not. It's like, you know, in one subject, in a time a lot, but after that, specifically in this like AI world, it is changing minute by minute. So it won't be enough, I don't know, PhD like or being prof at the school. You always need to be learning, and like, again, every new tools that comes out, or even you need to be researching, you need to propose a new tool sometimes. So it's up to us to make ourselves familiar with everything. Like, I wouldn't say everything, we cannot be familiar with everything, but the things that we see in our past that might be useful.
You know, there's this term called Hugging Face, which is like an open source community now, where you know there's all of these sharing of different capabilities within the generative AI. It's kind of an odd name.
It is, yeah.
And then there's this thing called LangChain, where you can, again, do something similar, but you can figure out ways to ingest different data sources and making them part of this solutions and putting them together in agents and so on. And then there's this idea of auto GPT, where you can give sort of like an end goal, and then it itself prompts. And for the audience, when you prompt, that's how you get it to do something. But what if the thing prompted working towards a goal? Those are really interesting things. And then there's this paper that just came out where they're saying that they can do 1 million tokens, and a token is almost like a word.
Yeah,
so,
almost, yeah.
Yeah, so if you work with ChatGPT, you're limited in the number of kind of words you can give it, and it could spin out, right? From, I think the limit now is 32,000 tokens or something, but a paper comes out and says now you can do 1 million token. That means it can sort of ingest all of that and sort of cogitate and do something with it, right? So so what are your views of all of that? 1 million tokens from 32,000 tokens, this LangChain idea, the auto GPT, this Hugging Face idea, and Google AI, they said that their Gemini model, which they're training now, can plan and has memory. right? Oh, and again, audience, you take a look. You know, maybe I misinterpreted, but that's kind of what
Yeah,
I heard, right? And those are things that were thought impossible, right?
yeah.
To have something do that. That's machine based. Now, what are your views on that? And of course, Microsoft will have something even bigger, and OpenAI will be coming out things that are bigger. So, you know, so I gave a lot of ideas here. Your thoughts?
Yeah.
One more, all of them.
Yeah, my thought is that it's never ending. We are in a research path which is super great, and it is getting to the next step again, as you said, like auto GPT models, that they do this prompting automatically to get to the goal that they want. So everything looks like, okay, we are creating something as intelligent as we are in, again, I'm talking about the language part of the brain, but those capability, but I should mention that we are able to do that because of the great hardware backbone that we have. If we didn't have those computational backbone, we won't be able to train that big. So again, it's I would say it's in a big company's hat. It's not like me. I can't train that model because I won't have like any individual. I won't have those access to like supercomputers or like those computational hardware. So that's a thing that we shouldn't miss. It is not like available for everybody to I would say train it from scratch. Yeah, we can get the model that it's GPT or Da Vinci model or whatever the model is, that retrain it on our data, but it still is based on the model that already was trained. So the thing is that it is super exciting because we are seeing like many improvement, and can you believe that they all started in the last year? I mean, before last year, if someone told us like, okay, in the next year, for me, even myself, if someone told me that next year you won't use Google search that much, you won't be in the Stack Overflow that much for your course, you are probably just talking with something and it will provide all the answer you need, it was like, I was like, no, that's not possible. But now it's possible. So everything that you mentioned, from like Hugging Face or the Auto GPT or like 1 million tokens availability, all of those are just something that I'm now open to be surprised with. And I feel like, yeah, we're gonna get even more surprising news in the future.
So Fatima, I mean, one of your jobs is to read some of these new papers coming out, and can you tell me what's that like? Because has the pace increased on the number of papers?
Yeah, yeah, it's not easy, and it leads you to be picky a little bit because you won't have even just I just want to be expert in computer vision. That's it. Like just in the image, not video, not audio. Even that piece itself is unbelievable big. Like lots of super great conferences about computer vision, like CVPR and others. So even just that direction itself won't be something that I myself can keep myself up to date always. But the thing is that I need to peak based on the work that I am doing, just to make sure I'm using the latest knowledge to do that. And usually I would say research is one step ahead of what we apply in the industry. I'm not saying it's good or anything, but it is how the research is, because it's the nature of the research. Even like deep learning itself, I guess you remember, originally was introduced, I don't know, in early 2000, but no one touched it, no one figured out it's that much useful until 6-7 years ago, that they started using it in the like image net and those kind of things, just figure out, oh, how much it's useful. So it was like there for 15 years we couldn't figure out how much like it can be useful. So yeah, this I try to keep myself up to date, and it's my responsibility to that, but I need to be picky in terms of like which knowledge I'm gonna be gaining in this current time, because of like this, again, as you said, there are many out there.
You talked about the compute cycles required to train these things, and there's this underlying cost. Some people are saying 50 million, maybe 100 million to train some of these really big foundation models, and yet you have this whole open source community that's creating tinier models, even ones that you can use on a good workstation laptop, let's say.
Yeah.
And its performance is getting close to some of these big ones, and I'm thinking like the CUNA is one that there's been a lot of excitement about, but Alpaca from Stanford before that. What are your views about this open source community? And then there's that leaked paper from a big tech company, and where they say, open source, maybe even, or my interpretation of that leak was the open source could be even more dynamic than the big techs, and maybe even more capable. So what are your views? Do you follow the things that are happening in GitHub and other sort of open source communities, and have you played with some of these smaller models to see what they look like and how they feel?
I myself haven't had the chance to play with this smaller model, but my husband is doing that because of like the system that he is working on, and he explains to me how much it's different than like let's say if he is working with GPT 3.5, which is the model behind ChatGPT. And I know like how things are going, and I do agree about like the open source community. It's more dynamic, and the reason is that they don't have those regulation obstacles like to being handled with, so they can develop and release the models or codes or tools much more easier. And I do agree it's more dynamic, but still we cannot deny the power of the money behind the big companies as well. So that's a driving point to that can like maybe the open source community can't keep up with.
When you look at Auto GPT, and that just really exponentially got a lot of attention, and a lot of people started playing with it, and there's even free ones available where they'll give you the capability to drive a certain target, and then it'll do it until it runs out of sort of the free compute cycles, and then they say you got to get like an official license from OpenAI or somebody like that, right? But the fact that anybody could do this, anybody could play with this, right? Or you can download this thing into your computer to play with it, right? So you don't even have to go online to somebody who's offering it. I mean, that's I don't know.
That's the thing that I was talking about at the very first of our conversation.
Right.
It's that again, it's the same as it's not different really than like I don't know, just the drug company that they want to release. It's even if I am a private company that I don't get financial support from any government, even I'm that company or that person, I still cannot like release a drug myself that I'm building in my house, right? Again, there are something out there that we see is super useful but can be used with bad actors, and we need to be aware of that. And again, I guess I emphasized a lot today about this part of being you misusing the AI, and usually the people that are in this world don't do that. They just say how much great it is, and I know like the audience know how much great it is, but I just wanna give the hint that, again, because of the great guys are giving the hint that it's getting super intelligent, and whenever it's getting super intelligent, it means that it has the ability to influence people. And whenever it has the ability to influence people, we need to manage it somehow.
Fatemeh, you talked about, let's say last year, somebody had come to you and said, by the way, in a year's time, this is what you would have gone, no, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of these, in my opinion, I think even some of these top DeepMind people would have thought the same thing, or many of them, right? They would have said, no, it's not going to happen. And there's these major strides, like let's say you have a system that has the ability to plan. So that's the plan, right? And Google's announcement of Gemini today is going to have plan, it's going to have memory. And you have access to the internet, let's say through one of these foundation models, and it can self-generate its own sort of prompts to take action towards a goal, and it can create code and actually look at that code and make corrections to fine-tune that code.
Yeah.
Those are pretty amazing things.
It is, yeah.
And that's just in the space of less than a year, really, when all of this came out, right? So, wow, what is next year going to look like? So, Fatemeh, what is next year at this time going to look like?
I don't know. I really don't. Because I would say sometimes this rise in the technology is happening. I wouldn't say the next rise in the next year gonna be as big as this one. I can't see it in the like next year. Again, I don't know really. No one knows. But because of this one being that much big, I'm pretty sure we're gonna see something fascinating and astonishing soon. But I don't know when it's gonna be, because like I see it being like this powerful ability being it's just like a guess being combined with biological science. How they gonna affect like the longevity of the people? I mean, it's something like this, or any other direction in human life can be affected by this discovery here. So I don't know, but I think something's gonna happen big.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting again. I mean, this thing comes out, and then people start, the general public starts playing with it, and then they realize that if you chain thoughts together, chain of command, right? COT they call it, and they prompt it in this kind of chain of command or chain of thought, I guess. COT, chain of thought method. You get better results. And then if you get it to reflect on its results, to say worthy inaccuracies and can you improve it, you get better results. And then if you get it to select amongst multiple alternative results and say why is one better than the other, and kind of optimize for that, you even get better results. So there's this language understanding test. I think they call it an MMLU, right?
Yeah.
And it's a way of assessing how good this thing is. And I think ChatGPT-4 is like at about an 86%. And some people, or maybe only one person, but there's this idea that maybe if you hit it 95%, then you got like AGI, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing is that if you do this chain of thought with reflecting, getting it to reflect, and getting it to select, and you automate that process, you're going to get maybe over 95%. Because you can do that manually now, right?
Yeah.
And we got Auto GPT, where you can get it to, but you could get Auto GPT to combine those things, right? And it, in fact, even does a little bit of that now. So then you get it planning and memory.
That's true.
That could happen this year.
Oh, really? Okay, right? I didn't expect that. Yeah.
I'm just speculating. In fact,
It totally makes sense. And that's the thing. Now it makes sense. Yeah.
It could be happening, but not being released yet.
Yeah. That's the point. Yeah, it's getting to there. I see that, but I don't know how will government and everything gonna handle that, because like the concept of AGI, again, it's super big, and I don't think we are now prepared to be there. I mean, again, we were not prepared to be here as well, so we need to figure it out, I think.
Yeah, or you have Jan LeCun could sort of say no, that it can't do that. You need that sort of kind of hybrid model, or sort of this more complicated way
Yeah.
of doing that, right? And
Yeah.
deep learning is not enough. And I watched a small lecture he did, and I thought, well, really, that's really interesting. Who's going to win? The Jan LeCun is kind of thinking, or this thing that's happening where with these foundation models and what's happening? Who's going to win?
That's, I don't know, that's a $1 million question, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't know.
It's got to be a really exciting time for you, though, because you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you sometimes you feel responsible because not everyone around you, like in family and friends, knows the AI deep. And they are like, they sometimes my dad come back to me and they say, is it really true? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And so I mean, so even like being that reference to confirm some news from something that might be just a fake news, it's like my responsibility rather than the company's job, which is again, which as you said, I'm in the middle of it and I don't know the direction and I really can't predict the future, but I have some feelings that, as you said, some of this change might happen that really gonna change every individual life tremendously.
You know, Fatima, in our discussion, we're even having trouble predicting this year or even next year. Can you imagine
Exactly, yeah.
5 years
Like
from now?
5 years, yeah, 20 years from now. Yeah.
Interesting time, and you have quantum computing, and there's this idea of marrying quantum computing with some of the things that's happening in machine learning in a way that seems to make sort of double optimization kind of capabilities. I mean, all of this is quite amazing, isn't it? Okay,
Yes.
so this
Yeah.
this is like in the last minutes, any topics you just want to free form talk about, and then what are your final recommendations to the audience?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. My recommendation is still, I feel like some are at this point that is computer science world is still um, a, a reliable industry for us because of everything is getting automated. Maybe there won't be a job if I want to like start learning it now in like 5 years. My answer would be like, no one knows the future, but I know it's getting automated, but it's opening the avenue for lots of new technologies in the industry as well. So yes, I think it's still reliable if you are interested in to pursue your dreams in this world and in this direction. So from someone who didn't want to start it, but I'm super happy that I did. Yeah.
And maybe I could add a bit of an addendum to that, is you have to be agile. You got to
Exactly.
constantly be willing to learn
Yeah, exactly.
and be adaptable. Well, Fatima, thank you for coming in and sharing your insights. I mean, you're driving it, you're impacting the world,
Thank you.
and the work you're doing, and a great conversation with you, and look forward to more. So thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to the brand called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.